Good morning. Happy Tuesday. It is Technique Tuesday and I have a great one for you today. We are going to be using our Stampin' Right markers and we're going to be using them to step up our cards. And I actually have 12 different ways to use these markers that we're going to talk about today to step up those cards of yours, because these markers, so many great options with them. So these are actually part of our January and February Celebration 2025 free in the Join Kit offer. So these you get to pick any two sets, any two color families, along with our Handmade Designs stamp set as a Celebration Join offer. That's one of the options, and so these are so great. So I know many of you have these and are always looking for ways to use them, right? So we're gonna get started today, and I'm gonna share with you those 12 fun ways to use our Stampin' Right markers. We wanna step up our cards, right? So using that Handmade Design stamp set, I went ahead and stamped a bunch of these images. Let me make sure that you can see this. Okay, so this is our fun plant image that is one of those in the Handmade Designs. I've got myself some Stampin' Right markers here that we'll be using today. And the first technique that we're gonna quickly talk about is pointillism. So pointillism is when you stamp an image and then we take our Stampin' Right marker, it's got the bullet end, and it's got the brush tip end. So we're gonna use the bullet end for this part. And so what you're gonna do is you're just gonna make dots. So you're just gonna make little dots. And what those do is they're going to fill in our image. And so the more you want it filled in, the more dots you'll make. The less you want it filled in, the less dots that you will make. And so this is a great way to fill in an image instead of coloring it directly. And you can also use the brush tip to make different size dots. So we've got the little dots there, but you could use the brush tip and, make bigger dots if you wanted to do that as well. But then you color that in, and I actually showed this on Friday. So here's Friday's example, but here is a pointillism colored plant versus one that is just colored in directly. So you can see it just kind of gives a different look to the image, right? All right, so that is technique one, a little bit of a review, but I didn't want to leave it out in case anyone was looking for this full list. All right, number two, I've got a card that I've done already here. This is a Thinking of You card. And so another great way to use this is to text and journal. So you can use the bullet end again. And if you were doing a scrapbook page, you could, do all of your journaling with these pens. They're great for that. But also you can use them to address the envelope, or what I love to do is use a coordinating color. So I've got Lost Lagoon here. And if I was, addressing this to my friend Liz, I could write her name in the color of the card so that it matched, right? So everything was coordinating. And then I could just finish my note to her and then I could sign it, and that would be just a great card because everything would coordinate, right? So that is way number two to use these markers in our card making. All right, number three is using some ribbon. So any light colored ribbon will work for this, and this is a sheer ribbon. This is our sheer white and silver ribbon. So you can take this and lay it flat and take any one of our colors. I'm going to use our Melon Mambo here so that you can really see it, but you're just going to take the brush tip end of the marker and you're going to color the ribbon. You're going to make sure you need to give it time to dry when you're using these markers, but you can see I'm just going over this and coloring in my whole ribbon. So I'm gonna leave the end there undone so that you can see. So now we have some Melon Mambo ribbon that matches with our card directly, right? And you can't even tell that it's colored. You can also flip it if you want it a little bit darker or more, you know, a little more solid. You can flip it and do the back side. And now you have some beautiful ribbon that coordinates, right? Let me grab a piece of white so you can see this. But it will coordinate beautifully. So if we were using this, now remember I didn't color those ends, but isn't that beautiful that you could have ribbon that matched any of your cards? Maybe you didn't have every color ribbon, and so that gives you a great way to, you know, have various colors without needing them all, right? All right, number 4, let's bring in that piece of white again. You've seen me do this on so many videos. This is one of my favorite ways to use the Stampin' Write markers is for speckling. And so we call this flecking or speckling, but you'll hold your lid, you'll take your brush end of your marker, and you're just gonna kind of wipe it along the edge of that cap. And then when you do that, the closer you are, the more, the bigger they're gonna be. And you're just going to speckle your card. I love this technique. I think it just adds lots of interest to your card. And it's so easy and fast, right, to get those speckles onto your card. So that is technique number 4. You're just getting all kinds of techniques today, right? All right, technique number 5 is using our markers to create some accent lines. And so you're gonna select like 3 colors. So here I've got Pool Party, Coastal Cabana, and Lost Lagoon, 3 that kind of coordinate together well. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take, I'll start with my lightest. We're gonna take the brush end, and we're just going to take our marker and go along, not the whole page, but we're just going to go along. And then we'll take our next darker color and we'll kind of do the same thing. So we're just kind of adding some accent lines here. You can make them thicker if you want, or thinner if you want, by using, you know, the side of your marker. And we're just gonna make some accent lines. When you use the 3 colors, they just really, you can fill it in, right? But then they just coordinate together. And then this could be a lovely background to a card, just a little accent piece, you know, almost kind of creating your own designer paper. And then you can take your lighter color and kind of go back, leave a little bit of white space as well. But now you have a fun kind of accent piece that you created with your markers. Okay, so the next one is going to require a block, and I've got a piece of watercolor paper that I have stamped with our Stays On ink with that plant image from that set. So I've already got that stamped for us. We're going to need a block. And so what we're going to do is we're going to color this in. And so we want to use this Old Olive to color that in. So we're going to take our block. Instead of just coloring it directly, we're going to add some color to our block. So all I did was color it with the brush end of my Stampin' Write marker. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our water painter pen, okay? And we're going to add some water to the top of our block. Hopefully you can see that. So we're just going to swirl it in that color. And now we're going to use these markers to basically be a watercolor for us. So we're just going to be able to fill in our leaves here, but it's going to give a very different look by watercoloring with these markers in our water painter than it would if we were to just color them, right? And of course you can go back and darken them if you need to, but it's a beautiful way to use these markers to create that watercolor fun that we love, right? All right, so then that would dry and we would have this beautiful watercolored image using our Stampin' Right markers for the ink on that. So far we've got 6 ways to use these Stampin' Right markers. Let's move on to our next 6 ways. Let me clear this out of the way. And what's great on those blocks, let me grab my chamois here and show you that when you're done with it, you can just take your watercolored block, wipe it off in your chamois, and it's totally clean. Doesn't stain them or anything. So love that, right? All right, number 7 is we're gonna take another piece of paper. We're gonna take some Melon Mambo here, and we're gonna make lines again. So remember we made lines before, but we're just gonna make some lines, just some kind of basic lines on our paper with some Melon Mambo. You could use multiple colors for that as well, but you're just gonna draw the lines using the markers, and then you're gonna take a die or a punch. So I have one of our new hug punches here, and we're just going to punch out. So we're gonna line that up, punch that out of our paper that we drew the lines on. And now you have a already accent or accessory piece, right, for your project that is already colored. Yes, you could punch it and color it, but this way it doesn't leave these end marks where you are done coloring, right? Hey, Stephanie, good morning. Sure can't wait to see you tomorrow. All right, number 8 on our techniques today. I'm gonna bring in a piece of basic black just so that you can see this, but I have die cut a rectangle shape ahead for us, and I'm gonna take my black Stampin' Right marker. So this is just basic black, and so for this you can use a die cut shape, and we're gonna actually make a border with our Stampin' Right markers. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You can use dots, so we can, you know, kind of like the pointillism where we make like maybe a dotted border. We could do a dashed border, which is one of my favorites. I love to do that. We could use a ruler if you wanted to do some kind of straight edged here, and you could do just a line, right? Or a couple if you wanted to do, you know, something like that all the way around your paper. Or you could do some kind of like a squiggle, you know, whatever style that you like, but you could even do, you know, some kind of squiggles as a fun border. So lots of options, but creating borders around our images. So then when you put it, of course this is different ones, so we may not do all 4 on one image, but if we were to do that, like our dashed border, let's say, and we did that all the way around our die cut here, it would be a beautiful border to an image, right? Just gave it a little bit of accent without having a lot of fuss. So I love using the markers to create those fun borders. All right, on to number 9. Let me grab my next prop for us. So I have created with the meant to be stamps, a little cute bumblebee here. And so number 9 way to use these markers is to give our images some connecting, right? So to connect images. And so we're gonna draw some lines, which on a B is perfect, right? Because we can draw those dotted lines like we just talked about to either connect images or to just give us some extra fun, right? And so maybe we don't have a stamp that does that, or maybe we do, but maybe that stamp doesn't go in the direction that we always want it to. So it's great for being able to connect images with some dotted lines where it would make it pop and just add that little bit extra, right? All right, number 10, let's bring in our kind of talked about this a little bit, but we will bring in our plant images here. And so we talked already about the pointillism, but what about just regular coloring? Because we can surely do that too. So you can take your markers, and I like to go kind of circular motion when I'm using these, but you could go any way you want. But when you do the circular motion with these, you don't get a lot of those lines that you might see. Like if we were to color over here and we did like, you know, this, you might see those lines, those stripes in there. Hey Lizzie, good morning. But when you do the circles, it kind of masks that, right? So this is just the quick way to do it, but you can go through your image and just color it in using these markers. All right, so that was number 10. We've got two more of our 12 ways to use our Stampin' Right markers. So number 11 is going to be using, let me grab some paper here, using a block again. So we've got some watercolor paper here. And I'm going to use a smaller block this time. And we're going to use two of our greens here. We've got Old Olive and Granny Apple. So we're going to start with our lightest green. And I'm going to, again, color my block about halfway through. Then we're going to take our darker color. And we're just going to color the other side of that. So this is our Old Olive. Now we're going to bring in some water. So this is just a little spritzer bottle with some water. And we're going to spritz this. So you want to make sure that you don't overly spray it. We're just going to do kind of like one good spray, let it sit for a second, and then one more. We don't want to overly, like you don't want a big blob of water here. And then we're going to take this, and this is going to be like a stamp. So we're going to turn it upside down. We're going to hold it there, and you could leave it, you know, for a bit if you wanted to. Just to kind of let it spread that water. And then we're going to let that dry. And we're going to do that again. So to do that again, we're going to take our chamois. We're just going to wipe that off. Now it's all clean. And we're going to do it again. So we're going to take our, not our bullet end, we're going to take our brush end. We're going to color half of that block. Take our other color, and you can do this with 3 colors as well. And we're going to color the other half of that block. Then we're going to take our water. Now I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it now. We don't want to just drown our block with water, because now it's really hard to flip, number one. So you're going to see when I flip, look, it makes all this mess. So you don't want to do too much. And then when we put it down, there's so much water there that now it's just like this blob mess, right? So you want to just do like a light spray, a light spritz of that water. Let me clean my block off again. And then we're going to let that dry. And so if we did them both the right way, when they dry, they will look something like this. Every time it will look a little different. You can see this one probably had a little bit more water. This one maybe had a little bit less. And so we've got our images there. I'm going to move this out of our way here for a second, because I've got this here. And you could turn it either way, right? But I'm going to bring in now my Stays On ink and this image here. And so we're just going to ink this up, and when they are completely dry, totally completely dry, then we will take our image and we will stamp it right over top of that fun watercolor block. So using the Stampin' Right markers and a block to kind of create your own block stamping, it creates a great background for a sentiment or our images, right? Because now, instead of coloring those, they have this beautiful artistic effect to them, right, with the watercoloring. And let me just show you an option. So we talked about not putting too much water because it creates this blob, right? So once that dries, I did one earlier using Pool Party, and I want to show you 2 differences. So number one, This was the block that was so wet and like just like this one, right? So I let that dry fully, and that's what it looked like, the 2 block images. Now you'll see this one where I stamped it, oh my goodness, you can hardly see the image. It's missing the whole thing. It's not like this one and dark, right? Like you can't even see it. Well, that happens for 2 reasons. Number 1, it looks like a big old blob when it dries because I used too much water. And then number 2, I didn't fully let that dry when I stamped those images, and that is why, on purpose, I did that to show you if it isn't fully dry, when you stamp it, it won't show up. So this one was fully dry. We stamped those on there, and you can see them beautifully. Now, if I was to take this one that is still wet, you can see it. It's shiny on camera and everything, right? So if I was to try to stamp on that right now, let me show you what I'm talking about. So if we inked that back up, you can see it's glossy and still wet, right? And then I was to stamp this on there. Well, that one came out better than the other, but you can see it's still missing so much of the image because it's so wet. So you want to just kind of do a bunch of those, let it to the side while you maybe work on the next step, let them dry completely. The watercolor paper is great because they do dry faster. And when you're in a pinch and needing to do it fast, you can always take your heat set tool and put it on there and it will dry it even a bit faster. You can even blot it a bit if you needed to take off some of that extra water. But if we just spritz lightly, then we won't have that issue. All right, and then number 12, so let me bring in some basic white paper, take out that sheet that is so wet now because I oversprayed, and we're gonna grab the other Stampin' here. So this is that Handmade Design set again, and I love this flower in here, so we're gonna use that. Let me grab a block so that we can put this on, and this is our 12th. Let's see, will that work? That will work. Okay, so we just put that on the block. We're gonna turn this upside down. And so this is number 12 in our 12 ways techniques to use our Stampin' Right markers to step up our cards. So we're gonna use some Melon Mambo and we're gonna use some Old Olive. So we can take these markers, because these are the water-based ink, the same as our stamp pads, we can take these direct to a stamp. We can color direct to the stamp. So to stamp the image, you know, sometimes you don't want this, right? Like it's a flower, so it's not necessarily all going to be green. It's not all going to be Melon Mambo, right? So we can take our marker. I like to use the brush end for this, but I think you could use either. And so we're just going to direct to the stamp, color all the areas here. And you could do this with sentiments, you know, maybe you want one word to pop out. You know, like there's a sentiment in there, have the best day ever. Maybe I want the word best to be a different color than everything else. And so I could color those words in the color, you know, in the specific colors that I would want each one. Okay, so I think we've got the flower part colored well. So let's take the brush end again to the leaf areas. And so when you're doing this, it is drying a tiny bit while I'm coloring the next parts, right? So what we're gonna do is we are going to give it a little hot air. So we've got that all colored. I think that looks good. And the 2 colors. So now we're gonna take our stamp that we've colored and we're gonna bring it close. Now I know you can't see my mouth, but we're just gonna go, so we're gonna give it some hot air. A little bit of hot air there. All right, and then we're just gonna stamp that down. And I like to kind of hold it there. And now our image is in the colors that we want. So we've got our Melon Mambo for the flower, we've got our Old Olive for the leaves, and direct color to stamping, especially as you're building your collection. of ink pads, right? If you don't have every color, but you have the markers, it's a great way that you're able to build, you know, your colors that you're able to use. So happy Technique Tuesday. I hope you have loved all 12. Let's see if I could bring them in here. All 12 of our ways to use our Stampin' Right markers to create some fun techniques. That isn't all of them, but to create some fun techniques for using these Stampin' Right markers in different ways to really be able to step up our cards. Happy Technique Tuesday. If you've missed any of our previous ones or would like to see the list of these, you can check them out on my blog at stampinqueenbee.com. You can also find them in my playlist on my YouTube at Stampin' Queen Bee. Have a great Tuesday, everyone, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.